Hey guys, Ron here, and a few months ago I made a video where I gave starter Pokemon split evolutions. Like what if Raboot stayed serious upon evolution and became a fire-electric type midfielder instead of a striker? As you know by now, first partner Pokemon are probably the most controversial group of Pokemon on the internet. There may be more hated kinds of Pokemon online, but nobody can seem to agree on whether or not some starters are exactly as they should be, or could have been so much more than they already are. So once again, I'm going to take some middle stage starters and give them split evolutions. These aren't redesigns of existing Pokemon, but rather additional new final evolved forms that showcase a different direction that these families could have gone in, but will obviously share a resemblance to their counterpart and will very much continue whatever was already established by their previous form. If you like this concept, then please leave a like and subscribe to let me know that you want to see a part 3, and perhaps give me suggestions on some more starter split evolutions. I'll begin with a Gen 1 starter. Blastoise, while slowly becoming a favorite of mine, is the only fully evolved Kanto starter that kind of abandons an aspect of its previous form. Wartortle has this sea-foam tail inspired by the Minogame of Japanese folklore, and winged ears akin to a Valkyrie? Which I assume is part of why in English its name references the word war or warrior. Not to mention that Blastoise kind of introduces a weapon that wasn't built up at all, considering Blastoise was originally going to be part of a separate line, and later became part of the Wartortle evolution line during early production. To be fair, his canons do fall in line with the whole warrior aspect, but what if Wartortle's evolution looked closer to Wartortle and expanded upon it? Something that is water and fighting type, and looks closer to Wartortle's beta evolution, and has a focus on physical attacks. I'm starting off with what is basically a Blastoise crouching a bit more as it aims the retractable spear from its shell. Its face is a bit slimmer and pointier compared to the hippo-like face of Blastoise, basically a turtle beak instead of a snout, wing ears, and arms that are covered in a shell. Since I'm taking a bit of inspiration from a Valkyrie, I gave it a shield and sharp weapon. To be fair, I'm also taking a bit of inspiration from Mega Blastoise. For that same reason, I wanted to add spears on its arms, retractable like Wolverine, but then it became overkill. I wanted to look more armored, with plates on its limbs, and even a more elaborate stomach. Basically a shell that is less tight, so it looks like an assault vest, giving it consistent patterns, and you'll notice how I made the spear look like a cone shell or even a conch, so that the weapon looks a bit more natural compared to the metallic hose that randomly appears on Blastoise. Refining the design before adding a bigger version of Wartortle's tail. It kinda ruins the silhouette, but it was a must. Since Wartortle is a bit more purple than Squirtle, I thought I should continue this progression and make him full on purple instead of light blue. Kind of a dark periwinkle, honestly. This is Aquawarrior, the Garrison Pokemon, a water fighting type with the abilities Torrent and Shell Armor. This ferocious Pokemon lives to fight. Every part of its body has evolved to be used in combat. It deploys a retractable spear from its shell that it rams into its opponent. It can puncture the hull of an Empire-class Cantonian battleship. When attacked, it blocks with its arm shells. Its ears flap in the heat of battle, cooling Aquawarrior off and allowing it to fight on. Its shell is mostly full of air, allowing it to easily float and release air to propel itself faster on land. It flails its tail to confuse its enemies. Aquawarrior is always ready to battle, and it's exceptionally easy to train, as it practically trains itself. It is extremely loyal and will defend its trainer from harm. Their shiny is a bit greener. You know how it is. I think I could have easily made a version with the spear retracted into its shell, like it's slightly over-designed, but that's because I couldn't just do exactly what Beta Wartortle evolution already did. I had to add some more stuff, and it ended up being cool, and having a ton of personality at least. Bayleef has always been the most popular of the Meganium family, and Meganium itself was always the least popular Johto starter Pokemon. Meganium is a fine design. The flower naturally appears, and the stamen antennas make sense, but it loses a lot of what makes Bayleef cool and unique. So naturally, I want to make a Bayleef evolution that looks slightly more like a giant Bayleef, and maybe even like a more masculine Meganium. I want to make a Sauropod starter that is way taller than the average Pokemon, and takes up a lot of space, and inspiration from the Brontosaurus, giving us the vibes of a walking tree, something that looks related to Tropius and even Alolan Executor. In fact, it will probably have the palm tree aesthetic and make it a dragon type. We'll begin with the general shape of a sauropod, long-necked dinosaur like Meganium, a bit stouter legs, and a manly crest. I was about to say chest, but I mean, that too. This is how I first evolved Bayleef's leaf, into this sharp crest. Originally I was trying to give this dude a warrior vibe with potential armor, but first we already did that with the previous Fakemon, and there was nothing in Bayleef to indicate this direction in its evolution. I kept the sharp chin, but finally gave it a long leaf since Honestly, that's the appeal of its previous forms. I thought about giving it bushes around the neck to mimic clouds to allude to how long the neck is, but after making the leaf look like a palm frond, I decided to make the neck look like the segmented trunk of a palm tree and even a coconut tree. Instead of Bayleef's neck sprouts growing into a flower, I made them turn into these regal palm fronds, almost like a cape for a king, since this would end up being the tallest standing starter. Tree trunk legs, which I originally gave patterns to, but then there ended up being too many conflicting segments. I toned it down later. Basic tree colors, you've seen them before, but since Chikorita went from green to yellow, I thought brown was a natural next step instead of going back to green like Meganium does. Say hi to Frondosaur, the tree Pokemon from Frond and Brontosaurus, a grass dragon type with the abilities Overgrow and Thick Fat. It has existed since ancient times. In the wild, they protect Meganium. They are extremely mellow and will rarely pick a fight. They are only aggressive during mating season. When competing with other Frondosaur, their leaves perk up and become extremely sharp. They swing their neck, cutting their opponent with their sharp leaves. Frondosaur's breath can increase the nutritional value of any crop. Mature Frondosaur bear extremely sweet fruit. Early civilizations would subsist of this fruit. Frondosaur is believed to be one of the first Pokemon to be domesticated. It is even believed that humans gained a boost in life expectancy and intelligence from eating the food cultivated alongside Frondosaur. Their shiny is a bit more wintry. Honestly, in a vacuum, this is what I expected Bayleef evolution to look like. I'm always a fan of gentle giants, and this scratches the itch for another one. I've never picked Chikorita, but I totally would if this existed. Incineroar was a relatively controversial Pokemon, despite it gaining popularity the longer it stayed in our minds. At first, people didn't want another bipedal, fighting-coated fire-type starter. It's a fantastic design with a lot of personality, and admittedly, Torracat set up everything that Incineroar is about, with a bell that becomes a belt, and buff arms that will eventually be used for its signature Lariat upon evolution. But what if it stayed on all fours and didn't become a dark-type heel? It still will have the belt of fire, but instead it becomes a giant ring of fire in battle. I'm not the first to make this concept. It was literally the most popular Litten Final Evolution concept in 2016 before Incineroar was officially revealed. But I'm going to take a crack at it now, so think of it like Incineroar's more tame brother. Starting with the slender body of a panther before giving it tiger elements, Torracat has a relatively flat face, so I'm not going to make its snout too long. The patterns are reminiscent of Incineroar's, but in reality I'm just naturally evolving Torracat's patterns. It just so happens that Incineroar already did a fine job doing this. Instead of a whisker-like tufts of fur that go up, they'll go to the side, almost looking like a showman's facial hair. I don't want to make it look aggressive like Incineroar, so I opted to not give it fangs. A ring of fire coming out of its belly. Gotta adapt the stripes. I gave it these connected stripes on the chest that mimic a bow tie, because once again, this guy is a skilled performer. The tail is also just a natural progression, and then instead of going back to Litten's red, I made it go into a more of a lighter orange, so that the family's color scheme goes in one direction, from red to reddish orange to finally orange. The final design will have a less uncanny anthropomorphic face, because right now it kind of looks too human. Behold, Flareath, the performer Pokemon, a fire type with the abilities Blaze and Flame Body. This Pokemon is noble and hardworking. It trains in the art of leaping and twirling in order to entertain its audience. Its roar ignites the passion of others. It will take any advice it can get in order to improve its art. It can leap 50 feet in any direction, catching its prey off guard. It finishes off its opponents by increasing the diameter of its navel fire ring, extending the reach of its fire and engulfing its foe. Its shiny is fantastic, but I can't take credit for it since it's similar to Incineroar's, but with magenta. I think many people wanted a Litten evolution like this. Many artist predictions were a bit too realistic with a face or body that didn't match Pokemon's art style, while this one is still clearly a cartoony video game tiger. Love the colors. And finally, Serperior is a fantastic design. It's a Pokemon I personally have zero gripes with. It's full of so much meaning, its fleur-de-lis pattern here, and white face masterfully reference French nobility. The tiny leaf hands behind its back and arrogant expression make for a complete concept. There isn't any direction we can take Servine except for the evil route, honestly. If we were to assume Serperior is just a king, what if there was a tyrannical version? How about a Servine evolution that is based on all the negative stereotypes of, snakes in media? Serperior is a French king, while our new evolution will be more of an emperor or dictator like Napoleon, combined with the Grim Reaper and even the biblical snake from Genesis. Now here's the thing, the Serperior line is so consistent, so this Fakemon will end up looking like a Serperior, because it can't be anything else. Not many aspects to a snake. Long body, pointy, snivy snout. Instead of a Lady Oscar-inspired hair pattern, my pattern will be inspired by Napoleon. That's 2 Napoleon-inspired starters for some reason. The neck frills on Servine will become 3 twisted vines. I wanted it to look like a primordial evil being, almost like this thing popped out of a biblical painting. Its head will have an Angel of Death, Grim Reaper head. It also makes sense for the vampire aesthetic I wanted it to have. Slightly more sinister eyes, and I want him to have some apple aesthetic, but I don't want to include any apples. And so instead, it'll have leaves dangling from the vines to look like branches of an apple tree. Instead of a fleur-de-lis pattern, just some more leaves, so it doesn't evoke royalty. Its belly pattern stemmed from Servine, but also mimic the look of Napoleon and vampires as well. I finally went all in with a smile and more branches to make it look like an ancient tree. It'll have leaf hands on its belly instead of its neck, so it looks more like a conniving schemer. And I added some dots to make it look older, but also to mimic the medals on a military officer. Dark phthalo green looks super sexy, and with the blood red, god damn is this beautiful. In my top 10 favorite color schemes of any Pokemon I made. Gives it the feeling of vampires, Napoleons, and even apples. Beware Slitherain, the tyrannical Pokemon, a grass dark type with the abilities Overgrow and Contrary. Its glare paralyzes its prey. In reality, this Pokemon is vegetarian and only likes to toy with those weaker than it. It tries to intimidate all it comes across, but will slither away if met with an opponent unfazed by its glare. It only fights those it believes are beneath it. Slitherain harnesses lunar light to power up its moves. Its face glistens in the pale moonlight. It retreats to a cave to sleep during the day. It is completely solitary and will not cooperate with others. In order to train a Slytherin, a trainer must have a more powerful Pokemon in their party to diminish Slytherain's pride and motivate it to get stronger than its rival. It may be because I love Superior, but goddamn is this such an appealing design to look at. It's pretty complete, and if you completely loved this video, make sure to leave a like and watch the previous part if you haven't. Subscribe if you want to see a part 3, and make sure to check the description for the music I used, t-shirts I made for you guys, and my Patreon where you can get cool rewards like seeing my videos days early, which you can also do by clicking the join button and becoming a member. Make sure to follow me on Twitter where I show sneak peeks of these designs, and I'll see you guys very soon.